So, Dan, why are we talking about this today? Fire.
We're
What does
talking.
fire?
Okay,
What
okay.
does fire stand
Hold
for?
up a second. We got a lot to cover today. We'll try to do it quickly. Here are your thoughts. Here's the basic idea. In the middle of the most enormous bull market of all time, the last decade, this trend came out on the blogosphere called financial independence, retire early. There are a ton of positive things about the fire movement. Unfortunately, and to quote a Business Insider piece, recently there was a New York Times piece about the fire movement basically saying, yeah, these guys are like totally effed, right? Because this strategy didn't account for stock market slips and something that we have
How?
been just ranting about. Anyway,
You're already getting too
sorry,
upset.
we're going to try to be productive in today's episode and honestly reach out across the aisle. And part of us, I think, gets so emotional about it is because we feel like we were the original fire crowd. Like we got into this game we got into this game to retire early. Like that's the whole point. We got into location independent entrepreneurship and lifestyle businesses was because we felt this was a effective way to build wealth, to enjoy a wonderful lifestyle and retire early. Something that the fire community also promises, but on different terms and with different vehicles. And frankly, with vehicles that are much more risky. And here's why. Our movement, the lifestyle business movement, came out of a fundamental sense of pessimism. In 2007, 2008, the economy shit hit the fan. Tech was a new thing. And all of a sudden, this hyper globalization was a new thing. People didn't have jobs. So we went out and moved to cheaper places. We became digital nomads and we started building businesses with new cost structures. Meanwhile, you got this fire movement pops up around 2014. Everybody's making over 100 grand a year. The stock market always goes up and to the right. And so this strategy is born out of this optimism that things are always going to be better, that things are always going to be up and to the right, that the dollar will be stronger, your savings will compound, and there's nothing more powerful than, not buying Starbucks and instead investing that money into the companies that make Starbucks, and then somehow you're going to make a lot of money and retire early. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Well, just to add to that, Dan, 2007, 2008, I'd say the lifestyle business crowd all went places with cheap rent, basically, or
Yeah.
cheap, basically places where you could live affordably, like Asia. That was one of the hot spots. It still is, right? To baseline, to a place where you could start your business when you had low expenses. This is all part of the fire community too, which is like you need to keep your expenses low, you need to have a low cost of living. But here's the difference: the lifestyle business crew went to Asia to baseline and then learn skills and start a business. So create assets. The fire community baselined, I think some of them, and then they invested in the system, which is now 30% down
Yeah. By the
this
way,
year.
which I think is a big something worth addressing in the fire community. It's like all anti-consumption, have an herb garden, don't get on airplanes. That's really bad. Oh, and what is the vehicle that is going to bring me the one thing I want most in life, at least from a lifestyle perspective, which is this prospect of early retirement, is to take every single dollar I've ever earned and invest in the consumer economy.
Yeah. Invest in these things that you don't participate in.
It doesn't make any sense. It's a okay.
Okay, but there's other vehicles too. Um
Here,
uh
here's a quote from Business Insider. I just want to start off this.
sure.
A lot of fire folks are putting on a strong face right now, and I want to give a shout out to financialsamurai.com, a really cool blog. Someone who came out in the early days and has retired early, sort of been blogging buddies over the years. But I can assure you that behind the scenes, there is a lot of devastation. So part of what these 5 points today are going to be about is avoiding devastation, de-risking the path to early retirement. Actually, I think being more punk rock and cool. There's nothing punk rock about the S&P 500, and we're going to talk about how to make your own market and other ways to actually get it done.
Somebody tweeted me today, Peter Keller actually. I had sent something out about this fire movement. I had retweeted the New York Times and I read that article and we're going to talk about it. But then he said head over to Reddit, and so I headed over to Reddit because there's uh, the fire community is prevalent over on Reddit. I just started to read some of the stories, and I think it's like worthwhile for everybody to go over to Reddit at some point today and just read some of these people's stories. And one of the things that I've noticed, um, there isn't mass hysteria yet, okay, but I cannot believe how over leveraged some of these people are. Like at some point, the gurus in this community advocated like basically buying as many rental properties as you possibly could. Again, maybe not a good strategy for the market that's about to come. And this guy, I'm reading through this right now. This guy's basically getting bailed out by his grandfather, and that's going to lead us to this dire
So
thing.
dire is this awesome acronym came up with financialsamurai.com. It's basically the new strategy is going to be because people are going to lose their jobs. By the way, Mr. Money Mustache came out with he's a leading guru in the movement. His article post yesterday in response to this New York Times piece was you didn't just lose half of your retirement savings. And my response, which wasn't really reflected in the theme of the comments, was yeah, you did. That's exactly what just happened. So I just don't understand like this worldview sometimes, so close, but so far apart.
Well, so in continuing what I'm saying here about this Reddit thing, Dan, this guy is getting bailed out by his grandfather, and
Oh,
I'm
sorry, I didn't mention the dire thing. That's what you were mentioning with
I was
the
mentioning the
okay,
dire thing.
got it.
Okay.
So it's delay, inherit, uh, retire, expire. So, in other words, the accusation is that because so many fire people have taken on a risky strategy that depends on both stock market timing and optimism and and holding a job for a long period of time, that ultimately these younger fire adherents will depend on their baby boomer parents to bail them out. And I started going through the Rolodex in my head and I thought, yeah, that's actually a decent strategy for a lot of people, right? And it's sad, but anyway, I don't want to say too much about that, but
So
that's what Dyer's all
if you
about.
go over to Reddit, Dan, just read through. I think it's worthwhile. Read through some of these comments because people are laying out what their situation is, like how much cash they have, what they're invested in, what they're trying to do. And there's two common themes. One is that people lost 35% overnight, basically in their stock portfolio. The other is that a lot of this community is extremely leveraged in rental properties. The other thing is they don't seem to have a lot of free floating cash liquidity right now. And then the final thing is that everybody is waiting for the other shoe to drop. Everybody in here has a job and
Yeah,
they're like, I haven't gotten fired yet.
yeah, yeah. Well,
That's
again, I want to underline that I think in some ways our strategy is fundamentally pessimistic. And the strategy of fire is fundamentally optimistic, a strategy that would drive you towards leverage. In fact, the number one response in terms of emotion to Mr. Money Mustache's response to this New York Times piece, which we're going to quote quite a bit from, was optimistic, optimism, up and to the right. These strategies depend on optimistic outlooks and optimistic outcomes. Our strategies do not. And that's the fundamental difference. And look, sometimes you're going to win when you're optimistic and you bet it all on black, but sometimes you're going to lose, and that's what happened the past few weeks. So we're going to talk about how to de-risk it. And before we do, I just want to define the difference between fire and what we talk about at the TMBA pod. So there's two different types of fire. Typically, what you're going to see is work a high-paying job, save all the money you can, put $1 million in the bank, and then withdraw your 4% every year and live off of $40,000 after you've saved every latte money and put it back into the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial or index funds, generally speaking. Now, there's also a movement called lean fire, which suggests that you need $500,000 or so, and you can do a similar strategy. By the way, just looking at this like on the wholesale, if you're just going down the buffet of different strategies, you can start to see the cracks right away. It's like, wait a second, you need $1 million to live off of 40,000? The hell kind of thought it? What is that? It's this fundamental asymmetry of like, I got this enormous amount of cash. I'm going to risk it all to make 40,000 bucks. Wait, who came up with this idea? It's insane. It's not a good idea. It doesn't resonate with me. Does it resonate with you? Does living off of $40,000 is a cool idea. I love it if you're baselining, if you're saving money. But this idea that like this is where I'm planning. I'm planning to live off of 40,000 bucks a year. Like
yeah.
that's the end game. It's like I don't this I get why people choose this strategy, but what I hope today's episode can do is not just a laugh fest, but also there's an easier way. There's a more fun way. There's a more fruitful way. So here's what that looks like. And admittedly, we've done a bad job of laying this out. So here's what we're going to call a financial platform. So that's going to look like $200,000 plus in liquid assets in a zombie portfolio. A zombie portfolio is highly cash based. It places very small bets on volatile assets and puts less than 50% in large index fund type investments that don't return big percentage points year over year. Um, we don't depend on compounding with our liquid assets because our small businesses are compounding assets.
If you have a small business, by the way, Dan, that returns you 4% year over year, your business sucks.
yeah.
Like that's a shitty business. Like that's not one that I would want to own.
Okay. So the first part is that 200K in liquid assets. The second part is the remote business that is relatively automated. This is a business that takes you between 5 and 25 hours a week to manage and administrate. And these are businesses that admittedly would take you years to gain the experience to learn how to run. But that skill set, say that business gets burned up in a recession, that skill set will be an asset that you'll retain for a lifetime. Whereas being a career person in a career that gets wiped out or whatever, that is no longer an asset to you in oftentimes.
So in reality here, what this remote business is, it's relatively automated. It's a skill set that's transferable. So the business is a vehicle for your skill set, and that can be applied to different things. I mean, at some point, you might have to go get a job. I don't know, but chances are, if you have a skill set, you can start another
Yeah,
business.
and for those of you that might be visiting this live stream, that skill set is called bootstrapped entrepreneurship. That's the ability to basically create value out with no money. In many cases. So a good example would be fixing up an old car. You buy or say somebody donates a car, you find it off the side of the road, it's a piece of crap, and then you fix it up for a month. That car could be worth 3 or 4 thousand extra dollars.
Yep.
You didn't mine that $1,000 from the ground. You didn't steal it from anybody. You didn't hustle or trade for it. You simply created money out of thin air, and that's what entrepreneurs do.
Which, by the way, I mean, there is talk of that in the fire community, because I'm interested in that, so I go over there and I see what those people are doing as well. But it, here's
Don't
here's
call them those people, you know?
here's part of the religion though that it kind of stops short, which is they're not actually interested in making it into a business. So, like in terms of resourcefulness, like fixing your own car, having your own herb garden, like these are all things that that community is interested in. But they're not interested really in taking it to the next level, basically owning it, having responsibility for it, and turning it into a
Oh, no,
business.
they wanna give their money to Coca-Cola and Boeing.
Right. So,
I
eh,
and trust them. That's the thing that like it's like, look, you're halfway to punk rock. You got the bass and the guitar. All you need is the haircut and the drum set. Like go the whole way. Like why are you outsourcing this to normies? If you already have the herb garden, if you already like you got it all down. Just start the band. That's my punk rock plea. Two other elements of this financial platform, which is essentially what retirement early looks like in our community, is making tangential side bets that are small and de-risked. So I talked to a friend this morning. This has been a very common theme since all this shit hit the fan. A good friend's in the travel niche, and he said, obviously all my travel stuff is fucked right now, but I started these side sites in like this niche, and I'm not going to name the niche, but if I named it, you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm sure that's doing pretty well right now. And that's the sort of thing you do when you're on this entrepreneurial journey and you have a lot of time. And then the final point is covered living expenses, so that you always got a couch to crash on, you always got a home paid for, or whatever it is that's going to be your baseline place to exist. That's what early retirement looks like in our community. And part of the reason I got so passionate about this thing is I know a lot of people doing like fire type strategies. And I also know a lot of people doing location independent business strategies, small business entrepreneurship. And one just seems to have so much better outcomes than the other. So this is even in good times. This idea that you're going to maintain a high paying job more than a decade, and by the way, that you're going to enjoy that, then you're going to save all your money and you're going to depend on the corporations of the world to then return a small percentage for the big nut. And then you're going to do that for 15 years. You're going to be like, cool, I'm done. Like that's the game plan. It doesn't resonate with me. I'd rather spend that 10 years building an entrepreneurial skill set, and it doesn't need to be stressful. In fact, I think having a high paying job is more stressful. Okay. So, one final thing about our strategy versus the fire strategy I want to say is the one thing about the fire strategy that's way better than ours is it's legible and it doesn't include a lot of uncertainty. Well, it does, but it doesn't acknowledge a lot of it, right?
Yeah,
And so our strategy is fundamentally pessimistic, so it acknowledges the uncertainty up front, which makes it harder to adopt. But one thing I want to say, the fire community is very good at saying this is how long it's going to take you. Of course, that's completely changed. They got to go back and do edits on all that shit, but we don't. So here's our time frame. I think it's going to take you about 1 to 3 years of apprenticing to figure out what entrepreneurship's all about. That means you're working in a remote team. By the way, that can be a lot of fun. The second thing is, I think it'll take you probably 1 to 3 years to replace a professional salary with um, your own small asset portfolio. And then I think to get to that financial platform level, we're looking at about 3 to 7 years. So that could be
total.
an extra. Uh, well, so I think basically 7 to 10 years is what I'm quoting.
Hmm.
That's what we're quoting here. Now the difference is again, this is a de-risk strategy. This is a pessimistic strategy. So let's say you fail fabulously, which many of us have. What do you walk with? First off, you're getting paid for your learning, so you're probably going to walk with some savings. Second off, you're going to walk with the skill of entrepreneurship. You can always start another business. And third of off, you've been punk rock the whole time. So like you've owned your time, you lived where you want to, you had the extra latte when you wanted to, and you can do it again. Whereas if you're standing in a position where it's like a lot of people, my family, friends, like whatever, they enjoyed big salaries and then they turned 40 or 50 or their industry changed and it's like gone. It's just gone. And that job doesn't exist. And what do they have? Only that money that they saved. And I think we can do better than just money.
Mark B. Awesome. Mr. Brenwell, I presume. Big fan of fire just because people are thinking differently. I think frugal entrepreneurship is much better, but a bigger leap for most. Yeah, I don't agree or I don't disagree with that, Mark. The idea that like the leap is bigger and what Dan said is true, which is the legibility is less. Like it's harder to figure out what's going on. And that's part of our job here is to try and distill that for everybody. But with any religion, any clear religion, yeah, it's generally written down in a big book. And the other thing about religion is like it doesn't really change that much, right? So like right now we're seeing the gurus in the space be like, it's okay,
They're digging
stay
in.
stay the track, it's gonna be fine. To me, TMBA is a bit of a religion. Lifestyle business is a bit of a religion, but I'm willing to compromise on points depending on market conditions and what's going on in the world. I'm willing to adapt. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to, you know, correct course based on what's going on. I think that's what makes this a more robust religion. That's what makes this a more robust strategy is that it doesn't just depend on one direction.
Yeah. And one of the things to piggyback on Mark's point there, what up, Mark? Mark is just crushing me in some online chess tournaments right now. I made some bad moves, and he's just exploiting the hell out of me right now. It's a terrifying feeling. I'll say this, like, um, uh, sorry, I'm thinking about that horrible move I made.
God, well, let me just say this
Oh, sorry,
before.
but the timeless thing versus the timely, like, this idea of frugal entrepreneurship is a timeless strategy.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth acknowledging which parts of your strategy is going to break down in different economic climates. And I think watching like some of the gurus in the fire community dig in right now and say, you know, no, it's going to be all right. It just feels dishonest, and it feels it makes me angry, I guess, because it's like they're owning this message is more important than the veracity of the information itself.
Well, you know why that is? Eric Timmer just popped in the chat.
What up, Eric?
He says gurus in the space are making money on their blogs. That's exactly right. So
Well, we're gonna get to that. Let's
that's
get to that.
exactly right.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do, guys. We're gonna talk about 5 ways to de-risk your early retirement, and then if you're really curious, we're gonna dig into some of this New York Times article. Ian wrote to the author. We're just fired up about this piece, but I wanted to lay out some of our principles in terms of de-risking your early retirement. So number one is prevent personal ruin, aka don't go all in or don't be a turkey.
Again, go over to Reddit. Look at how many people are all in. Like this guy talks about being cash heavy, and he's talking about having $15,000 in the bank account. He's got a rental property. He's in another rental property. His grandfather had to bail him out. I mean, there's just countless stories over there. I just scrolled through it this morning. These people are all in. They're up to their freaking neck right here. And then the stock market, one little hiccup, right? And then the rental market,
Yeah.
their Airbnbs are empty. One little hiccup, and the lid blows off the whole thing.
My guy Nassim Taleb always says, "Don't be a turkey." Who's a turkey? The turkey is like fed by the farmer every day for 1,000 days, and then thinks it's going to get fed on 1,001. And the
This is
farmer comes by and it's Thanksgiving, buddy, and and the Indians are eating. That's what's going on. Pilgrims are eating. So, uh, number one, this idea uh, of not being a turkey is built on a belief system that believes that you fundamentally can't own your own market, that you can't control your own dollar. I can understand that belief system where it's, hey, I'm doing the best I can, I'm earning this money. Now at some point I'm drawing this line and I'm going to give it to the CEO of Coke to like be in charge of my retirement. And by the way, the returns aren't that great because it's a retail investment. But also, if you're a blogger, like Eric says, and you suggest that, it's super legible. People are going to click through. It's advice that everybody can follow and get something out of, and you get your affiliate commission, and everybody wins. Do not be a turkey. Nothing is worth risking financial ruin for. Certainly not the returns that you see in the stock market. Okay, number one. Number two, don't bet on the market, make it. Let's be real here. The stock market is a casino, right? It's just a game. It's not some fundamental good thing to do, which it's always been propagated in our lifetime. Like this is just what wise people do is benefit from the compounding interest of Coca-Cola.
And by the way,
Company
you're
and
invested.
friends.
You're invested, but you're not over invested. You're not a turkey. And you lost thousands of dollars last week.
Yeah, I
Right?
lost a lot of money.
But you know what you said? Who cares? Who cares? I'm going to keep it in there. Let's see
I'm
what
not a
happens.
turkey. I'm not a
Might
turkey.
go back up.
Yeah. So here's how you make your market. We talk about it all the time. 1,000 true fans, 100 true customers, 10 true clients. It doesn't matter what Coke and company are doing. All you need are 100 people to support your amazing idea or product or fire blog that people click through or whatever. So long as you're making your own market and not investing in it, then you're going to have a higher percentage chance of achieving early retirement.
Again, this is that skill set of entrepreneurship, right? It doesn't matter if the market's up or down. You have the skill set to make money. You have figured out how transactions work. You have figured out how real value works. Real value. Real money making strategies.
Can I
Okay?
get on my soapbox?
Sure.
Here we go. I'm going to step up on it. A trope in the fire community is that when you write a case study blog post, you take out all your affiliate income from your blog because that's not a replicatable strategy. In fact, what we're talking about is this risky strategy of working the high paying job, not drinking lattes and investing in Coke and Company, aka the S&P 500 Dow Jones Industrial. But here's the secret. Do you know what's more replicatable than retiring early from the fire movement? Starting a retire early blog and putting affiliate links on it. What strategy is easier? What strategy is more robust? What strategy fares well during a time like this? What strategy is easier to replicate? I'll let you be the judge. I'll let you guys be the judge.
I would like to have some credit card affiliate links.
Watch their feet, not their mouths. Watch their feet, not the mouths. Start a blog. Call it, Mr. Money Beard. Put some affiliate links on there. You're going to be rich. Come on. All right. We talked about two things. Don't be a turkey. Don't bet on the market. Make it. Number three, develop an income source that you love and is leveraged not by loans, but by location arbitrage, by passion and learning. AKA what you do every single day with your time is an enormous hedge. How do you not be a turkey? You hedge, right? One hedge is that you do shit you like. You don't go to some job that the fundamental idea that you want to retire from something early. Why would you do that thing? Why would you go to 10 years to do something? So hedge against that by doing something that you're passionate about. Like Ian and I love doing podcasts. turns out a lot of people make money off a podcast. So why don't you hedge by doing something you love? It can be profitable. My guy Mark Brenwall has a hedge because he enjoys running his business, selling on Amazon. How cool is that comparing to a job where you wake up and you do what other people want you to do all day long?
Well, our parents' generation, I think we're we watched our parents' generation basically, Dan, and the generation before that go to jobs that they didn't like basically and make
Yes.
huge sacrifices to send their kids to institution, essentially.
And ultimately, probably to give them a retirement nest egg.
That's what they thought was gonna happen, right? So they went to these jobs, a lot of them unhappily for years and years and years. And then the fire community came along and said, like, you know what? We're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna accelerate it a little bit more,
Yeah,
right?
we're
So
gonna drink less lattes.
we're gonna drink less lattes. We're gonna consume less, but we are gonna give money to the machine, the consumer machine.
Yes.
But
We're
we're
going to
gonna
fund the plastic cups that the lattes go in, but we would never have one.
right. But it's this idea of acceleration, and one of the reasons why, or their idea is to accelerate that process. And one of the reasons why I feel like the lifestyle business community bucks that trend is because you don't know what's going to happen, man. And this is a sad reality: is like you do not want to be at the end of your life thinking like, man, I really wasted it, or I really spent my time doing things that I didn't want to do. And I think you and I, Dan, and a lot of people probably listen to the show are in the same position as like I would rather make less and own my time and freedom.
Oh, hell yeah. That's an
Because
ultimate hedge.
you never know what's going to happen, man. Bad things happen to good people. People get sick. All kinds of crap happens. And
Yeah.
if you're in a situation where you're working for 10 to 15 years towards something and then a freaking lightning bolt hits like it did the stock market, and you think like, what am I doing? What
Yeah.
have I just done? That's awful. That's an awful feeling. I actually feel for these people right now. It's not a good time, man. I mean, I'm feeling bad for them.
All right. Let's go to number 4 point to de-risk your early retirement.
I just want to say, Dan says, I'm starting Mr. Money Neckbeard. That's my favorite. Thank you.
uh, the fire community focuses on deals on consumables, and a lot of leverage deals, to be frank. But what we're advocating is deals on assets. One of the things that Ian brought up is like, I invested in an F-250. He spent a lot of time with the spreadsheets, and it's the kind of asset that's maybe unthinkable in the fire community. I have an F-250 versus a bicycle and a stock portfolio. That's your take.
I have a bicycle too. Um, but here's the point. This is kind of a loose point, which is basically, yeah, like the 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 vehicle is a tool for me, and
Yeah.
in that community, it's unthinkable that you would spend that much on a vehicle, but it's really a tool for me. Um, and it's one that in Texas is actually an asset. Like the rate in which it depreciates is very little here in Texas because it's such a tool. I mean, people actually use it for work and for business. So that was a loose joke.
I
Uh,
love it. Um, I'll just say like the final point here is just to like, and especially if in the future there's somebody that's thinking about life paths and things. The final point here is simply take a look at like what's actually transpired for people that adopt different strategies. And Ian's point to go over to Reddit, look at how the difference. I mean, a lot of people's core businesses in the lifestyle community have been devastated over the past few weeks. From every single person in the travel world that I talked to, every single person in the hotel space, I saw multiple examples of either their side bets going up or them immediately responding with something that leveraged all the resources of that primary brand and like was a little tweak and a pivot. And it's like, we're going to go do this now. And it's like, isn't that a wonderful position to be in relative to, holy shit, I hope I don't lose my job. I hope Bill down at headquarters doesn't decide that I'm expendable. I just don't want to live that way. And I don't want to then also outsource my primary wealth generation to Coca-Cola, Boeing, and company because I'm punk rock, you're punk rock. We're not in love with those companies anyway. So why are we going to give them the fruits of our labor? And look what they did with it. By the way, I understand that starting a business looks intimidating. But hopefully, in a time like this, we can see that it's actually a fun path. It's fruitful, um, and it doesn't need to be as hard or as uncertain as it looks from the outside. The real uncertainty is outsourcing all this shit to somebody else. Our good friend Travis Jameson said, if you look at the fundamentals of this freaking casino over the last 10 years, a lot of it wasn't real productivity. It was financialization. It was it was assholes cooking the books, moving shit around to make it more valuable so that your stock market goes up and to the right and you get the kind of returns that not only everybody wants, but everybody needs, because people are betting on this just to get paid back for the loans that they've given to people over the years. So, you know, the cool thing about having a very small market that you control is that you can invest directly in productivity that you see. You know, you don't have to have this belief and optimism that, hey, you know, a lot of people in the fire community right now are like, the belief in American ingenuity to figure this out and to come back. It's like, how about you just pay that person $200 and they make you 500? Like, you can see that productivity rather than this grand scheme of we always bounce back, you know? And it's like, what does that actually mean? Does that mean we're going to buy more hamburgers in 4 years than we bought 4 years ago? What is bouncing back exactly? We're going to develop vision technology. I'm not saying, I hope we bounce back. And I hope the stock market goes up and to the right. You know, I'm going to
But
get,
you're not depending on
I'm
it.
not depending on it.
So,
That's it.
Dan, you know what's outperformed the S&P 500
Pretty
recently?
much everything.
Ferraris. You know what's cool about a Ferrari? You can actually drive it. You can actually enjoy it.
Mm.
You can actually have some fun with it.
Some people can enjoy it.
Some people can enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of different asset classes out there that aren't in thin air.
It's like we're in
The-
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and you're Ferris, and I'm the other guy.
Here in the back, like holding on, like, oh
Like,
god,
this is my dad's Ferrari.
slow
Man.
down.
Like, I'm not feeling good about it. Let's. So those are our 5 points. If you got another point, let us know. I'm going to read some quotes from the New York Times article as well as a Business Insider article, and we're going to do some quick fire responses before we get off the pod here. From the New York Times article, the fire movement was born during the stock market's historic 11-year-long wealth creation run. Professionals in their 30s and 40s were saving up $1 million nest eggs and quitting their jobs in the prime of their life to live off of those investments. It was unheard of in modern times, at least for anyone without a trust fund, or at least for anyone who hasn't read tropicalmba.com. Where are you, New York Times? No, but honestly, the digital nomad community, the lifestyle business community had this stuff sussed out half a decade before all this noise about investing in Coke and Co came along. That's my take on that. Any hot takes on this unprecedented in modern times? This is also unprecedented. It look, I hate to do this, but just go read all of Nicholas Nassim Taleb. He's like Babe Ruth. He called all this shit before the pitch was thrown. He called the pandemic. He called the turkey stuff. He said it was insane to not be hedged against disaster. You're risking too much to make too little. It doesn't make any sense. We turn that upside down here at the lifestyle business community. We risk very little in order to make a lot. That's it. Just draw 2 triangles and turn them around in terms of risk. That is the fundamental difference between this optimism strategy that depends on small returns for a lot of investment and the pessimistic strategy, which suggests that, hey, I'm going to start 63 businesses. They're each going to cost me a couple $100 to start. And at the end of the day, I'm going to have 1 or 2. That's a pessimistic strategy. The optimistic strategy says, I'm going to have 1 job and I'm going to invest it in 1 casino.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. All right. We're in a society that values capital more than labor, Mr. Long said. This is quoting from a successful fire person. I don't like that, but I take advantage of it, I guess. A society that values capital more than labor. And again, this is that don't drink lattes, but invest in the plastic cups that you drink them out of kind of hypocrisy. It's not just a kind of a fun hypocrisy, but it's also like, it's an idea to like, it's an anomaly. Like, is this really what you want to be doing? Is this really your ride?
Right. Like, I don't really agree with this, necessarily, but this is the vehicle.
Yep. Mr. Money Mustache added in the New York Times piece, this could all be misinterpreted as smugness, but I don't intend it to be that way. My hope is that by being self-sufficient ourselves, we are in a better position to help out other people who really need it. Yeah. Well, Mr. Money Mustache also said you didn't just lose a bunch of your savings, but you did. So I don't understand. Ultimately, this comes down to predictions and bets. That's my statement. Mr. Money Mustache even says as much. In the comments where he's responding to someone, he basically said, okay, you're being pessimistic, so you're betting on disease and recession and all this. And I am betting on ingenuity and up and to the right and the bounce back and all this shit. And my whole point is like, wait a second. I thought we were punk rock. Are we really just betting on the stock market now? Right? Are we just betting? Yeah, we are, because we're in a casino. Thank you. Finally, I want to give a big shout out to financialsamurai.com. What a wonderful resource over the years for the hilarious dire, delay, inherit, retire, expire. A lot of people in my generation are going to be depending on their parents for their retirement. And that's what family's for.
That's what family's for. Good day, sir.
Good day, sir.
Woo!
Good day, sir. It's Friday. What are we doing this weekend, everybody? We are locked down here. I'll tell you what. I'm going a little crazy.
He's going crazy.
I'm going crazy, but we're having a really good time. I feel bad to admit it, but we've been having an awesome time.
It's great.
One of the things I noticed, it feels a little bit back when I had a job many years ago. The time went a little faster, like the weeks went faster. And these weeks have been going fast because we've been on such a routine. You know, when you're an entrepreneur, if you're a traveler, you do all this crazy shit all the time, and it makes life feel longer. Because it's like, you you went golfing with this person on that day, then you had a business meeting with that person the next day, then you had this call with an investor the next day, and then it's like, oh my gosh, this weekend I got to fly to go visit my parents, and it's like life feels long. And now like it's Friday. Whoa, dude.
It's awesome, man. We're locked down here in quarantine. I haven't left the property in days, man. I'm loving it. This is great fun for me, man. And definitely doing the Podshop is great fun as well.
By the way, if anybody's following the story of the Mini Winnie, my dream RV, Ian and I worked on an offer. We offered $27,500 and no response. No response. So
they were asking 34. I mean,
they were asking $35,900.
35.9 for a Mini Winnie. This is an RV, a self-contained Class B RV. So it's got a Ford motor in it, and the back is like a big old ambulance. Anyways, what we're doing now is we're trying to help Dan find an RV, and we're sending out offers to people and trying to calibrate responses.
We're gonna fix the TMBA logo. Hopefully, we're gonna murder out this RV because we need something to do. We're gonna vinyl cover the thing. We're gonna make it black, and then we're gonna put the logo on the side, and then we're gonna have not only the pod shop, but we're gonna have we got to come up with
the rolling pod shop.
The rolling pod shop.
But here's the thing: is like, and I'm interested to hear from other people what's going on too. If you're trying to acquire things right now, a lot of these people are. These dealers are acting like nothing's going on. Like, oh man, what are you talking about? Like this. I don't watch the news. Nothing's going on here. Like, what kind of offer is that? So they're acting like nothing's happening right now. Like we're not in the middle of some kind of pandemic. But
the difference of like when people are going to accept, when the realities are going to hit home for different segments of society and
thank you,
Tim.
Tim.
Businesses are going to be. Sorry, something going on?
You just said turn Dan up, which is unbelievable given how loud Dan is yelling that it's not louder.
Turn me up. Can you guys hear me? This is good. I like it. Yeah.
So anyways, these dealers are acting like they're not in the middle of a pandemic. But here's what I want to know.
Well, and they're not yet.
They're
from
not.
Their perspective. They're not getting ahead of the game by trying to like liquidate their inventory right now.
Okay, so point being is I want to hear from other people who are trying to buy assets right now, because here's my belief is that a lot of people miss rent on April 1st. Basically, they didn't pay the rent. They didn't want to pay the rent. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
They stole the broccoli, as you put it.
They stole the broccoli. We'll get to that. Question is, how long does it take for that to actually go into motion, for things to actually happen because of that? I think foreclosures happen within like 60 to 90 days. So my prediction is that we're actually not going to really see any fallout here. It's going to be trailing.
Yeah.
And we're not going to really see any fallout here until maybe later in the summer.
You're starting to see assets on the market from, I would say, like, not high dollar assets, but
Boats.
yeah, and like you're starting to see a lot of dumb cars go up on the web, like cars. You know the car. We we have this old term. I don't know if this is offensive, but I'm just going to say it because it's real. Because we've been saying it for like almost 20 years. We call it the restaurant M3. Drop me a little comment if you know what we're talking about here. But it's this idea of the server that works down at the chop shop that drives an M3. And I get it. Everybody wants to drive an M3, but that's not really a responsible car to be driving. It's too expensive to repair. The tires cost a mint, all this kind of shit. You're starting to see a lot of restaurant M3s go up, and that kind of asset class where people with not stable careers bought expensive shit, basically. But yeah, you're not seeing, and boats are a lot of that, right? And then you're not seeing homes quite yet, stuff like that. So cool. What do we got?
Well, I'm asking Jeff a question. You said real numbers so far from Cheyenne, sub 6% missed rent or mentioned they will. Only 6% missed their rent. That's pretty low.
But Jeff, this is after you cut that special deal with them too? You did like an intervention?
So Jeff owns real estate and rental properties. I do agree that June, July is when the tide will go out and we'll figure out who is swimming naked, so to speak.
It's tough, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you really like want to do something. And it's awesome, Jeff, what you did with that intervention with your those who are renting from you. I believe Jeff has over 100 tenants. But as folks who are looking for opportunities, it's just so tempting to want to just pull the trigger, you know. And at least on this asset stuff, it looks like we have to be patient.
This does include 2 who got a cut. All right. Well, that's not bad. 6% is pretty good.
Oh, Doug's here. What up, Doug? I'm looking forward to talking to you in a few days here. I gotta get you back to you on the emails.
TC. Cool, guys. Well, interested to hear your thoughts. I think that there's going to be a lot more talk about this in the coming weeks and months. Just seeing how this shakes out, you know. I don't think anybody hopes that the stock market goes down. Like, you know, nobody's like rooting for that to happen necessarily. I don't want to come across as like waiting for this moment, but I've kind of been waiting for this moment.
Our strategy is fundamentally one of pessimism.
Yeah.
Optimistic pessimism. So yeah, the reality of reality has been there the whole time in the actual DNA of how we build businesses. So it's exciting because there is part of us that's devastated by what's happening, but there's also part of us that's like, cool, like no one else wanted to recognize that this was happening, which means there's a lot of zigging going on and we can zag. And that's just part of the reality of all this. Cool.
All right, Dan, happy Friday. Happy Friday to all you guys out there. Thanks for joining us on the pod.
Have a great weekend, everybody. That's it. We'll see you on Monday. By the way, Ian at tropicalmba.com and at dynamitecircle.com, Dan at tropicalmba.com and dynamitecircle.com. Email us anything to do with this like live stream, what we could do next week. If you got a voicemail for us, maybe if you want to call in, some questions, whatever it is, we appreciate your sort of emotional support in terms of figuring out things that might be interesting to do. The hardest part, I know a lot of you are content producers, is just knowing what's interesting. You know, part of it is like you have to trust yourself as an entrepreneur. Like, I read this article and it made me mad, so I think this is interesting. And then when people ask you questions, it's like this hack to because like, well, at least they think it's interesting. So, you know, so questions we consider to be just a huge dime or assist in terms of doing these live streams. All right, we appreciate it, guys. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.